everybody. We are so excited to be back for our next video installment. So as you know, I'm Nicole with True Homes, and Ariel and I are doing a really cool video about the different processes throughout the build process from a client and agent point of view with True Homes. And today I'm so excited to have Ryan Darge from Truist with us, one of our preferred lenders, and he's going to talk us through the approval and the appraisal process after Design Studio. But first, I want to say welcome, Ryan. And then can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, thank you. So, as Nicole mentioned, I'm Ryan Darge with Truist, and I've been in mortgage now for, I think, coming up on 8 years. Been with Truist for a little over 2, and I've worked with True Homes, since probably for the past 5-6 years. I've been working with True Homes in different markets, from Charlotte to Greensboro to Raleigh. So I've been all across the footprint and had a lot of experience, done a lot of different things, and so I'm just excited to be here.
Yep, it's one of the things we were really excited about when you came on the account, is just how much you wanted to be here, which is, I think, hugely important. So
Absolutely.
Cool. So we're going to jump right in. I'm going to start asking Ryan questions to give you guys answers from the perspective of a loan officer at a preferred lender throughout our process. So can you briefly explain the role of a loan officer and the process of approval and appraisal for new construction residential builds, specifically here at how we do it at True Homes?
Yeah, so as far as the process of approval to start, I mean, a lot of these things happen simultaneously too. So here at Truist, the approval and the appraisal kind of happen at the same time. Once the client comes out of showroom and we finalize that purchase price, it's then time to kind of update everything on our end to reflect, everything in the contract, make sure it matches, right? The purchase price, HOAs, all of the fees that are listed in the contract, all the contact information for all the agents. We get all of that uploaded into our system and make sure it matches 100%. And then we kind of comb through. By that time, the client is already kind of expecting, what we're going to ask of them. So that way we can get some documentation to get into underwriting for that initial approval. So for me specifically, what I do is I just kind of compile a list of information of what I'll need from the client, send some initial disclosures, follow up with an email, just kind of listing everything that's needed, and give them a deadline. Because our role as a preferred lender is to not only help the customer get to the finish line, but it's also to help the builder meet their metrics, right? And hit those dates when we're supposed to be hitting them. So this process happens very quickly. Right after that showroom appointment, we jump right on it, get that list out, and let them know, hey, we need all this back by this date, right? Once that happens and we get all that information back, we'll submit the file to underwriting, and at the same time it's being submitted, the appraisal will be ordered, right? If certain documents have been obtained, but not all documents, we can go ahead and actually order the appraisal before we submit to underwriting, so that way we can give ourselves a couple extra days to meet that date. But overall, this piece of the puzzle here, approval and appraisal, they pretty much happen at the same time. It's very quick, very fast paced. And as long as from my perspective, as long as you're walking the customer through that and they understand why you're having to move as quick as you're moving, it becomes pretty smooth. I hope that answers your question.
No, that was perfect. And I think my follow-up then, which isn't on our list of questions that I gave Ryan, everybody.
Curveball.
I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear you say it. So why is it so important that this happens quickly after showroom?
Well, I mean, everything in the new construction process hinges on, the prior, happening, right? So if I don't do this in time, if I don't get the approval in time, if I don't get the appraisal in time, it delays the start of the home, which subsequently pushes back everything, including closing. And that's when we have kind of a disaster, right? So it's really important for us to meet the date, so that way we can keep everything on track and keep the customer satisfied and keep everybody at corporate satisfied as well.
Right. And so just a little bit to share with you guys, what we're essentially trying to do here with this process with our preferred lenders is different than other builders, is get you to a point where if that house was ready right now, you could buy it, right? Like that is the ultimate goal with underwriting and appraisal up front. And if you're in that financial position, what is your opinion as somebody who works in the financial industry on how we go about that?
How we go about what specifically?
Doing that first, making sure that that person actually could financially afford that home and is ready to go if that home were ready, even though it's not.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like from our perspective, what we try to do is just get an ironclad approval from underwriting, right? Your rate's locked, underwriting has reviewed your file. They say, hey, this is good to go. This is what we have left in order to close on the loan. Here's the appraised value of the home. And, you'll find a lot of places that they don't do the appraisal up front, right? They do the appraisal kind of 60 to 30 days out. But to your point, that's not meeting that mantra, right? If you can move in right now, if the home was ready, we need to have the appraisal done. So True Homes makes sure that when the appraisal is done up front, we know that the home that we're building is going to provide a certain value at that price point, and we're okay with proceeding forward because we know that this is going to work, right? So
Right.
that's kind of what my
I
perspective would
love
be on.
it. It
Yeah.
protects everybody. That's why we do it. But I love hearing that from other people too. Okay, so how does working with a preferred lender benefit both the sales representative, me or Ariel, the agent, and the home buyer during the approval and appraisal process? So what's the
Well,
difference basically between you and any other lender doing this?
I mean, just from True Homes specifically, they're very specific on who they have working with them and for them, right? And what I mean by that is, they don't just throw anybody on as a preferred lender, right? You have to have some experience. You have to have, been in new construction for a bit, because it's just a completely different animal. And, with us, we have access to, for instance, Trinity in your case, right? Your internal system where we can kind of update you throughout the process. We know what your expectations are. We know when we have to have certain things done. And that just creates a smooth process for everybody, specifically for the agent. The buyer's agent, they don't really have to do anything, right? They
Right.
just kind of make sure that the inspections are done and their client's happy. I mean, it realistically it hinges on me and you, right, to
Right.
get this stuff done. So for them, it benefits them because they're relying on somebody that they know has been through this process hundreds of times. They know that they're going to get them to the finish line the correct way, the most efficient way, and keep their customer happy, right? And for you, I mean, just me specifically, I don't really like to lean on you guys and put too much on you because you're still on the front end trying to sell homes and get things moving. So if there's a problem that I just cannot solve for, I'll reach out to you for assistance. But other than that, I just kind of try to run with it. So from a financial perspective, we really kind of tell the agents, the sellers agents, to say, hey, just be very basic up front, right? Let us really talk about the financing, and we've determined that that is probably the best course of action, and that helps out the most. For the home buyer, I mean, you can tell the difference. You can easily tell the difference when they're working with somebody that is a preferred lender and when they're not. Just because, again, you'll hear me say it a lot. We know when we're supposed to hit those dates, those
Mhm.
timelines, and at the same time make the customer feel like we're not trying to rush them, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of it's like baking a cake and putting all the details on top. I mean, it's just it has to happen smoothly but quickly,
Mhm.
and you just have to kind of give that impression that everything's going great, fine, perfect to the customer, but really behind the scenes, we're over here sending documents out, getting emails.
Mhm.
It's a little hectic, but it just benefits everybody because we have a direct line of communication to you, to the corporate office, and to our builder underwriting center, which I'm sure we'll talk
Mhm.
about later on.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I think from my perspective that I have noticed that really impacts the clients, which is ultimately why this is all set up this way, is risk management and client experience. And so I saw a note because I can see the notes right from the corporate office when they're trying to contact the lenders and stuff. And I'm savvy enough to go look at that once a week and see what's going on. Right. And I saw one that for like 2 weeks left voicemail, left voicemail, left voicemail, left voicemail because it wasn't a preferred lender and they just wouldn't even answer an email or pick up the phone.
Yep.
That ended up translating into a month delay on the back end for the client. A week on the
Yep.
front end can cause you a month on the back end. So I love that you're bringing that up. Okay, so you kind of went over my next question, which is about how you can expedite the loan process. It's really just knowing what you're supposed to doing and sticking to those timelines. So what specific services or programs or support as a preferred lender do you provide that sets you apart from other lenders? So I know we went over that a little bit, but let's go over some of like the financial side again as a recap for what people might have heard in one of our other videos.
Yeah, so I want to talk about two things. One specifically is a program, and the other is kind of our operations, right? So for us, we have what's called the BCOS, which is the Builder Center of Specialization, right? So we actually have a dedicated processing, underwriting, closing, fulfillment site specifically for new construction, right? So obviously True Homes, everything runs through the BCOS as well as other builders, right? But that is huge because I can't think of another place that actually has a designated builder fulfillment center. Everything runs through that site. All of those people that are there only do new construction financing, which helps, to be honest with you, it helps us out more than anything immensely. It keeps things moving along as they should. Every builder requires different things. They have specific people there assigned to specific builders. So you could not possibly get a process that is any smoother than how we have it set up right now because of that center of specialization. And the program that I want to speak about is our mortgage grant. We can offer a grant of up to $7,500 towards your down payment, towards closing costs, towards buying the rate down. This has been an absolute game changer in this market, especially right now with folks wanting to get the lowest rate possible. They may have the down payment, but they're like, man, the rate's still a little high. We can take $7,500 max. It's 3% of the purchase price up to $7,500 max. In this market, it's $7,500. And buy down that rate as low as we possibly can. And when we can actually get them qualified for that, which is really not overly difficult at all, it's just there's no other reason to go anywhere else. And that's kind of what sets us apart. That's not really specifically geared towards me as a preferred lender. That's offered to everybody. But I think that is a huge part of why we partner with True Homes, is because we have those creative programs, but we're still a bank. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
I love it. Okay, so how important is communication between you and me, the agent, the home buyer, and what steps are you taking to ensure that the communication is effective?
Communication for me in every aspect is number one. Just that's kind of how I sell myself, to be honest, because I think that you will find no one else out there that is easier to get a hold of from a mortgage loan officer perspective than me. And I pride myself on that, because if you can't get a hold of me and ask your questions and get answers to your questions and understand where things are, what the next step is, you're going to be lost, especially the customer. You and I kind of understand how the process works, right? We've done it enough. We're like, by now we're probably at this phase, right? We can kind of just keep each other up to speed if we need to. But specifically with the customer and the realtor, you kind of have to give them an update every step of the way. And what I mean by that is you're pre-approved. Here's your design studio appointment. Once your design studio appointment is finished, we'll submit you to underwriting or the appraisal. And once those things happen, letting them know that they've happened and letting them know that this is the next step. This is what you can expect next. And here is the time frame you can expect that in. Realistically, it's simple. And I think a lot of people try to overcomplicate it. It's just looping them all in on the same email or making a phone call specifically to the customer and to the agent, letting them know what's going on. If you don't have that, it's just not setting the proper expectation. And that's when you have the issues where people are like, oh, I didn't know that happened. I wish I was notified. And that is what creates bad client experience and opens everybody up to risk.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, so in your experience, what are some of the common challenges that arise during the loan approval and appraisal process, and how can you specifically as a preferred lender help navigate that?
Yeah, so,
this is Ryan's favorite question. I can see it in your face.
there are, everyone thinks that sitting at our desk, we are just genies in a bottle and we know everything. But, as a preferred we try to uncover every possible issue that could arise prior to putting a pre-approval stamp on it, right? So we ask all sorts of questions, and a lot of times the clients will be like, "Gosh, this just for a pre-approval, you're asking a lot of questions." It's like, well, I don't feel comfortable saying that we can do this loan and then telling the builder they can build you a $500,000 house without asking you a couple questions, right? So, we'll go through it with a fine tooth comb, everything but the blood type, and just kind of, a lot of times it's just a conversation. It's not necessarily an overabundance of documentation. It's just being able to kind of speak to what's happening. And common challenges that pop up, I mean, we cannot simply plan for everything, right? I mean, at some stage, something will pop up. You might owe $20 to the IRS. I mean, we don't know that up front, right? It's just kind of something that happens throughout the process. Or your bank statement might be in a business name instead of your name, right? And we're going so fast that it just kind of flies under the radar every now and then, right? There are things that pop up in underwriting every now and then that there's just no way we would have known unless a thorough review was done. Thankfully, that doesn't happen often. I think I can count on one hand in my career how many times that's happened with True Homes. So, and it's all been something that I wouldn't have known by asking an additional question or digging a little bit deeper. It's just, it has to kind of go through that formalized process. From an appraisal standpoint, I mean, obviously, you can get a low appraisal, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a couple
I can
ways
speak to that part a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's part of why we do it at True Homes, where we do it on the front end, right? So if there is a low appraisal, we have a whole appraisal management team in our office that keeps spreadsheets on spreadsheets on spreadsheets, which really excites Ariel, of all the homes we've sold, right? And then they can go search and filter and find the right comps and stuff like that, because not everything's in the MLS. And then they send that information over in a really nice document so that you guys can send it to the appraisal management company and request a reconsideration, or the agent can, or whoever wants to and is allowed to can. And so that process allows for the potential of reconsideration. But then if for some reason that doesn't quite work out, we still have options because we haven't built the house yet. So anything that hasn't been ordered yet, we can go back and look at it and see if somebody wants to pay cash for it, or do you want to take these things out? It gives you some flexibility instead of being 6 to 8 months down the road and you can't afford to buy the house because of a gap or something. You overbuilt it in the design studio and now you're also priced out of your market. So that it's to protect everybody, right? So that's how we handle the low appraisals. But I love working with you guys in any situation where anything pops up for any client. I have always seen it go better with a preferred lender than a non-preferred because of the communication. You guys will call us and be like, this is what's going on. How can you guys help us fix it? And this is what we're working on too.
And we understand the very next step that's going to be taken, right? And thankfully in this market, we've had things over appraising, so it's good. But I gotta say, I mean, in my entire career of doing this with you guys specifically, I mean, I very rarely is there an appraisal that comes in low that we cannot solve for. I mean, typically we can figure out a solution. So, I think a lot of people, when they hear that your appraisal came in low, they're like, oh, it's over. It's not over, right? We can solve for that. So, I think what you said is perfect.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. Let me rephrase this question a little bit from how I sent it to you. Do you set up, I was going to ask him if there's specific documents or information that people should be sending over to him to help facilitate it being smooth. But let me ask it more this way. Do you have a system in place to tell them what those documents are?
Yeah, I mean, on the initial call, whenever we first speak, I think a lot of people just generally ask, what do I need to submit, right? And so at pre-approval, a lot of the lenders now, we use the same software, to have people apply. When you apply and you actually submit the application, there's a document upload section. And based on how you entered the information, the system automatically knows what we're going to need. And it will list it there in the document upload section. So the customer can then, right when they're done submitting the application, just go ahead and upload what we need. And 9 times out of 10, we'll only need a couple of signatures on some documents and explanations of other things after that to get into underwriting. right? So the system's already set up that way to make it nice and smooth.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it. And then we talked about how fast it is, but what's the actual timeline that you're looking at with doing approval and appraisal after design studio with True Homes?
Well, I mean, I can pull something up here on my computer and let you know.
Mhm.
Typically when the Form A or the approval, sorry, it comes out, or when you come out of the